HOA Karen demanded widow remove flag, didn't know my uncle's a state senator. Karen's voice sliced through the quiet morning like a siren, shrill and unyielding. That rag on your porch is an eyesore. Take it down, or I'll make sure the HOA fines you into next year. She stood on Emily's lawn, hands on hips, her perfectly manicured nails glinting in the sunlight. Emily, a 32-year-old widow, stood frozen on her porch, her fingers brushing the frayed American flag that hung limply from a rusty pole. The flag had been her husband's, a Marine who never came home from his last deployment. It was more than fabric, it was a piece of him, a reminder of his sacrifice. Karen, the neighborhood's self-appointed enforcer, didn't know that or didn't care. The cul-de-sac was a postcard of suburban perfection, neat lawns, white picket fences, and SUVs parked in driveways. Emily's house, though, stood out. The paint was peeling, the grass patchy, and the flag faded and tattered, drew Karen's ire like a moth to a flame. Emily had moved here 6 months ago, after losing Tom, hoping for a fresh start for her and her 5-year-old daughter, Lily. But Karen, who ruled the HOA with an iron fist, saw Emily's grief as a violation of her pristine vision for the neighborhood. Emily's voice trembled but held firm. This flag stays. It was my husband's. He died for it. Karen scoffed, her blonde bob bouncing as she shook her head. Rules are rules, honey. That thing's a disgrace. You're bringing down property values. She gestured to the neighbors' houses, as if their manicured hedges were personally offended. Lily peeked from behind Emily's leg, her small hands clutching her mother's sweater. Why's she yelling? Mommy, she whispered. Emily knelt, stroking her daughter's hair, and murmured, It's okay, sweetie. She doesn't understand. But Karen wasn't done. She'd been simmering for weeks, ever since Emily ignored her first friendly note about the flag. Karen thrived on control, and Emily's quiet defiance was a crack in her perfect world. She'd already rallied a few neighbors to her cause, whispering about standards and respecting the community. Most didn't care, but Karen's persistence was relentless. She'd shown up at Emily's door 3 times that week, each time more aggressive, demanding the flag's removal. The tension had been building, and not just about the flag. Karen's reign over the HOA was a saga of petty tyranny. She'd fined Mr. Jenkins for leaving his trash cans out an hour past pickup. She'd reported Mrs. Alvarez's rose bushes for non-compliant colors. And now, Emily's flag was her latest crusade. The neighbors, though, were growing weary. Karen's complaints were a constant hum, like a mosquito you couldn't swat. That morning, Emily had woken to find a new HOA violation notice taped to her door, this one threatening a $500 fine. She'd crumpled it in her fist, her grief hardening into resolve. She wasn't rich, Tom's pension barely covered the mortgage, but she'd be damned if she let Karen dictate what she could honor. As Karen's voice grew louder, neighbors began to emerge. Old Mr. Jenkins leaned on his cane, watching from his porch. Mrs. Alvarez, still in her gardening gloves, crossed her arms, her eyes narrowing. A few kids on bikes slowed to gawk. Karen, sensing an audience, raised her voice. This isn't personal. It's about maintaining our community's image. If we let one person break the rules, everyone will. Emily's hands shook as she gripped the flagpole. This flag isn't breaking any rules. It's a symbol of my husband's service. You don't get to decide what it means. Karen stepped closer, her heels sinking into the soft lawn. Service. Please. If he cared about this neighborhood, he wouldn't have left you with that eyesore. Take it down, or I'll call the board myself. The words hit Emily like a slap. Her vision blurred with tears, but she refused to let them fall. Lily whimpered, and Emily pulled her close, shielding her from Karen's venom. The crowd murmured, a low rumble of disapproval. Karen, oblivious, pressed on. You think you're special because you're a widow. Rules apply to everyone. That's when Mrs. Alvarez stepped forward, her voice sharp. Karen, enough. That flag's been there 6 months, and nobody cared until you made it a problem. The older woman, a retired nurse who'd lived in the neighborhood for decades, had a quiet authority that made Karen pause, but only for a moment. Don't you start, Maria, Karen snapped. You're on thin ice with those tacky roses. Mrs. Alvarez didn't flinch. My roses aren't the problem. Your heart is. The crowd gasped. Karen's face reddened. But before she could retort, a new voice cut through the tension. What's going on here? It was Jake, Emily's neighbor from across the street, a lanky mechanic with a grease-stained shirt and a reputation for keeping to himself. He'd been watching from his garage, unnoticed until now. Karen whirled on him. Mind your business. Jake, this is HOA matters. Jake raised an eyebrow, wiping his hands on a rag. Looks like you're bullying a widow to me. That flag's not hurting anyone. Karen's eyes narrowed. You're one to talk. Your truck's an eyesore, too. I've got half a mind to report you next. Jake laughed, a low, bitter sound. Go ahead, Karen. Report me. But I know something you don't. He glanced at Emily, then back at Karen. Emily's not alone in this. Karen froze, sensing a shift. The crowd was no longer just watching, they were closing in, their murmurs growing bolder. Emily, still clutching the flagpole, felt a spark of hope. She didn't know Jake well, but his words carried weight. What Karen didn't know, what nobody had mentioned, was that Emily wasn't just a grieving widow. Her uncle, Senator Robert Callahan, was a state legislator with a reputation for championing veterans' causes. Emily hadn't wanted to pull that card. She'd moved here to escape pity, not to wield influence. But Jake, who'd overheard her mention her uncle during a casual chat, knew the truth. And he wasn't about to let Karen steamroll her. The argument escalated as Karen doubled down. I'm calling the HOA president right now, she declared, pulling out her phone. You'll see what happens when you defy me. She dialed, her voice smug as she spoke to the president, demanding an emergency meeting. Emily's heart sank. She couldn't afford a fine, and the thought of losing the flag felt like losing Tom all over again. But Jake caught her eye and gave a subtle nod, as if to say, wait for it. The HOA president, a mild-mannered accountant named Greg, arrived within minutes, looking harried. Karen launched into her tirade, pointing at the flag like it was a crime scene. This is unacceptable. She's violating Code 3.2.7. Exterior decorations must be in good condition. That flag's a disgrace. Greg adjusted his glasses. Studying the flag, it's worn, sure, but it's not technically a violation. The code doesn't specify flags of this nature. Karen's jaw dropped. What you're siding with her, I'll take this to the board. Greg sighed. Karen, you're the only one complaining. I've had calls from 6 neighbors today, all saying to leave Emily alone. Karen's face twisted in fury. You'll regret this. Greg, and you, she jabbed a finger at Emily. You're done here. In her rage, she stepped forward, grabbing at the flagpole to yank it down herself. Emily lunged to stop her, and in the struggle, Karen's heel caught on a garden hose. She stumbled, flailing, and crashed into Emily's flower pot, shattering it. Soil and shards scattered across the lawn, a stark symbol of the chaos Karen had unleashed. The crowd erupted. That's enough. Karen, Mr. Jenkins shouted, shaking his cane. Mrs. Alvarez rushed to Emily's side, helping her steady the flagpole. Lily sobbed, and Emily knelt to comfort her, her own tears finally spilling over. Jake stepped forward, his voice calm but firm. Karen, you need to stop. You don't know who you're messing with. He turned to Emily. Tell her. Emily hesitated, then straightened. My uncle is Senator Robert Callahan. He's been fighting for veterans' families for years. This flag was my husband's, given to me at his funeral. If you try to take it down, you'll have to answer to him. The crowd fell silent. Karen's smugness vanished. replaced by a flicker of fear. Senator Callahan was a local legend, known for his no-nonsense approach and deep ties to the military community. Karen's crusade had just hit a brick wall. Desperate to save face, Karen stammered. "I didn't know, but that doesn't change the rules." Jake smirked. "Oh, it changes everything. The senator's office already got wind of this. They're drafting a bill to protect veterans' families from HOA overreach. Your little power trip might just make history for all the wrong reasons." Karen's phone buzzed. She glanced at it, her face paling. It was a text from the HOA board, informing her that her actions had sparked a formal complaint. The board was considering her removal as vice president. The neighbors, fed up with her tyranny, had banded together, submitting a petition with dozens of signatures. As Karen stood there, surrounded by the wreckage of her own making broken pottery, a furious crowd, and her crumbling authority, Emily gently adjusted the flag. It fluttered in the breeze, tattered but proud. "This stays," she said softly, her voice carrying the weight of her loss and her strength. Karen, humiliated, turned and stormed off, her heels clicking on the pavement. The neighbors dispersed, some offering Emily quiet words of support. Mrs. Alvarez stayed, helping clean up the shattered flower pot. Jake lingered, too, offering to fix the flagpole. "You're tougher than you look," he said with a grin. Emily smiled faintly. "I had to be. For Tom. For Lily." That evening, as Emily tucked Lily into bed, she hung a small photo of Tom next to the flag. The fight had drained her, but it had also reminded her of the community she'd found, neighbors who, despite Karen's noise, had her back. The next week, news broke of Senator Callahan's proposed bill, dubbed Tom's Law in honor of Emily's husband. It aimed to protect veterans' families from HOA harassment, citing Emily's story as inspiration. Karen, meanwhile, was quietly removed from the HOA board. Her name became a cautionary tale, whispered among neighbors as a reminder of what happens when power blinds you to compassion. Emily never wanted to be a hero. She just wanted to honor her husband. But in standing her ground, she'd sparked a reckoning, one that reminded everyone that some fights are worth having. What do you think? Was Emily right to stand her ground? Or should she have compromised to keep the peace? Share your thoughts.